special guests before we get started. I'd like you to meet Hannah Schwartz from Children's Book World and her daughter, Heather. And they're the ones that brought us our famous authors. And before I'm not going to give a big introduction because we've been doing that in the library for 3 weeks now. So, I'd like to introduce you to Ridley Pearson and Dave Berry.
Excellent. Wow, this is amazing. Thank you guys for coming out and dressing up, and this is fantastic. I'm Dave, and this is Ridley, and there'll be a quiz on that later. I'm a humor writer. Most of my life I was at a newspaper humor columnist, and it never occurred to me to write a book for kids. Never did. I read a lot of books for kids, but I never thought about writing one for kids. And then I met this guy over here.
When my now 12-year-old daughter was 5, I was reading Peter Pan to her one night. And we weren't very far into the story, and she covered the page with her hand and said, "Dad, how did Peter meet Captain Hook in the first place?" And you know how your teachers talk about writing comes from what if and ideas that you've got to have. And that, to me, was this amazing idea. Where did Peter Pan come from? And Dave and I decided to write that story together. So in order to do this, we had to figure out what the story was. And we sat down and we outlined the book. We figured out the entire book from the beginning to the end in about a 5-day shouting each other across a kitchen table session. I'll read.
I'm going to read Wendy's part and Tinkerbell's part. Now, just so you know, when Tinkerbell speaks in this, she speaks in bells, so Wendy doesn't understand what she's saying, but Peter does. Ridley's going to read Peter's part and the porpoise's part, because Ridley, as it happens, speaks fluent porpoise. Right? See that? Wendy's left eye blinked open. Her right eye felt glued shut. Her head pounded with pain. Her parched throat screamed for water.
But it was daylight, and she was still alive.
She felt the porpoise's powerful bodies beneath her, felt the motion of the heaving sea. She was seized by a very unpleasant feeling in her stomach. She turned sideways, vomiting seawater onto one of the porpoises. Yeah. She tried to say, "I'm sorry," in porpoise, but it came out as more of a croak. Wendy speaks a little porpoise. In any event, the porpoises didn't seem to mind.
One of them surfaced close to Wendy's face. "Fish," it said. It opened its mouth to reveal a dead cod.
Yeah.
Where did the snake come from?
Where did the snake come from? He was the snake. The snake was the pet snake of this evil king, Zardoz, who had a bunch of servants, and he kept his snake hungry, and if one of the servants displeased him, he would feed him to the snake. If you want to be a writer when you're a kid, you really get into it. You write all the time, you read all the time, and there's always the possibility you really will become a writer. It's a dream that can really come true. Because we are writers, we both got to travel all over the world. We got to meet all kinds of people. And we get to look what we get to do for a living. We get to think of stories and meet kids like you. It's a wonderful, it's a great thing to want to do. Like really, if you're into it, if you want to become a writer, but to do it, you have to work at it.
And it all starts with reading.
Yeah, you read a lot, because you discover the more you read that there are a lot of these people who write really well who came along before you, and you can learn from them. The other thing is you have to practice writing a lot. Most people who are going to become writers already do that. They write all the time. The one piece of advice I will give you, if you want to be a writer at your age and you like writing fiction, is think more about plot before you start writing. What kids tend to do, my daughter loves to write. She's 9, she writes stories all the time. But what she does and what most kids tend to do, they just sort of pick a thing and start writing about it, and it goes on and on and on, and it's pretty good. It's well written and everything, but it's not going anywhere. You know, they don't really know where to end it or begin it. It doesn't have, and the hardest part about writing, in my opinion, and what the thing we work hardest at as writers, is figuring out a good story. Like so that there's a reason that the characters are doing what they're doing. And so the ending, when it finally comes, is exciting and satisfying to everybody. And so there's action along the way.
The other thing that will always get you a better grade with your teacher, and we go through this all the time, is you rewrite what you do. It isn't good the first time. You think it is, and it isn't even good the second time. It's good the third or the fourth time. One chapter in our books went back and forth 11 times. It was rewritten entirely 11 times before you read it.
if you came to school in a costume today, we'd like you to come up on the stage to get your picture taken.